Imagine opening a map app on your phone. You start with a view of the entire globe spinning in space. But to actually find where you are going, you have to pinch the screen and zoom in, past the continents, past the countries, all the way down to a single street address. That zooming motion is exactly how you have to read the first book of the Bible. The word Genesis literally means origins or beginnings. It serves as the foundational prologue for the entire biblical library, setting up the framework for everything that follows. This diagram shows how the book is split into two distinct halves. The first section, chapters 1 through 11, is the wide shot, the global view. The second section, chapters 12 through 50, is the close-up, focusing entirely on one specific family. Those first 11 chapters cover a massive span of time. They deal with the creation of the cosmos, the origins of humanity, and sweeping global catastrophes. Understanding this split structure is crucial. To grasp the intimate family drama that occupies the second half of the book, you first have to understand the massive, catastrophic crisis established in the first half. The narrative begins with a perfect, ordered universe brought out of chaos by God, culminating in the creation of the first humans, Adam and Eve, living in an ideal garden. But that order fractures quickly. Adam and Eve break the one rule given to them. This single act of disobedience introduces sin, mortality, and brokenness into the world, leading to their immediate exile from the garden. From there, the brokenness rapidly escalates across generations. We see the very first murder when Cain kills his brother Abel, and soon that violence spreads into a deep, global corruption. The text describes this corruption becoming so overwhelming that God initiates a drastic intervention to cleanse the earth, a massive global flood. Only a single remnant of humanity survives. Noah, his family, and the animals are kept safe aboard an ark, eventually coming to rest on the peaks of Mount Ararat. As the survivors begin to repopulate the earth, God makes a binding promise never to destroy the world by water again, placing a rainbow in the sky as a lasting, visible symbol of that covenant. Yet humanity's rebellion surfaces once more at Babel. Driven by pride, the people attempt to build a massive tower, much like this ancient Mesopotamian ziggurat, reaching toward the heavens. God responds to this collective arrogance by confusing their languages, scattering the newly formed nations across the globe. When you look at chapters 1 through 11 as a whole, a clear pattern emerges. It is a repeated cycle of human failure. The text demonstrates that humanity is completely incapable of fixing this broken world on its own. This is where the narrative performs that dramatic zoom in. We move from the scattered nations of the entire globe down to a single, ordinary man living in the ancient Middle East, Abraham. God initiates a covenant with Abraham. A covenant is a legally binding promise. In this case, God promises to give Abraham a massive family, a specific piece of land, and to make his descendants a blessing to the entire world. We follow the promised lineage from Abraham to Isaac and then Jacob. Despite their flaws, they keep the promise alive. The drama peaks when jealous brothers sell Jacob's favorite son, Joseph, into slavery, isolating him. Against all odds, Joseph rises from a foreign slave to a powerful political leader within the massive empire of Egypt. Instead of seeking revenge, Joseph uses his newfound authority to rescue his estranged family from a devastating regional famine, relocating all of them to safety in Egypt. This family's survival connects directly back to the very premise of the book. Keeping this specific lineage alive in Egypt is the only way God's restoration project for the whole world survives. The narrative trajectory is immense. It begins with the creation of the heavens and the earth, and ends with a single family living as guests in a foreign land. This progression follows a deliberate logic. The text builds a specific case for why the world is broken, then introduces a specific family as the mechanism for its repair. By narrowing the focus to this one lineage, the author establishes that the path to restoring the whole world runs directly through Abraham's descendants. Yet, as the final chapters close, the resolution remains a distant promise. The chosen family is safe, but they are living in Egypt, far from the home they were promised. Genesis concludes by defining the stakes and identifying the key players, setting the stage for the struggle that begins in the book of Exodus.